I found a journal of a woman who went missing at my boyfriend's cabin. Liam was the human equivalent of a beige wall. He was dependable, sturdy, and utterly exhausting to look at for more than 5 minutes at a time. We had been dating for exactly 214 days. I knew this because Liam kept a spreadsheet of our relationship milestones. Most women would find that creepy, but at the time, I thought it was just a quirky sign of organization. We were currently at his family cabin to celebrate our anniversary. The place was a rustic nightmare of taxidermy and drafty windows. Liam was outside chopping wood with the intensity of a man who had something very personal to prove to the trees. I was inside, searching for a corkscrew because being sober in a house full of dead deer eyes was not on my agenda. That is when I saw the corner of something shiny peeking from behind the heavy oak wardrobe in the master bedroom. I pulled it out. It was a small leather-bound journal. The name Sarah was embossed on the cover in fading gold letters. I remembered Sarah. She was the woman Liam dated before me. He told me she moved to Europe to find herself and never looked back. My heart did a nervous little tap dance as I opened the first page. It said, "He thinks I am losing my mind, but I am just losing my patience. If you are reading this, you are the next project." The journal was a meticulous record of psychological warfare. Sarah described how Liam would move her car keys just 1 inch to the left every single morning. He would subtly change the thermostat by 2 degrees when she was not looking. He would whisper strange things in her sleep and then tell her she was having vivid nightmares when she asked about them later. It was not a murder plot in the traditional sense. It was a long-term plan to make her dependent on him by slowly shattering her sense of reality. The goal was for him to become her only source of truth. The final entries were the most chilling. She wrote about how he was pressuring her to sign over her shares of her family business so he could manage them while she recovered from her supposed mental breakdown. I looked out the window. Liam was still there, swinging the axe with terrifying, rhythmic precision. I felt a surge of cold fury. I am not a fragile flower. I am a woman who once spent 3 hours arguing with a parking meter and won on a point of technicality. I decided right then that I was not going to be a victim. I was going to be the main antagonist in the tiny horror movie Liam was trying to direct. I spent the next hour memorizing the notes Sarah had left. He had a schedule. He had a pattern. He would start with the small things to build a foundation of doubt. That evening, as we sat by the fire, Liam looked at me with his practiced, concerned expression. "Maya, honey, you look a bit pale today. Did you take your vitamins?" I smiled back at him, my eyes wide and perfectly innocent. "I did, Liam, but I noticed something very strange today. The kitchen clock is running backwards." Liam paused, his hand hovering over his wine glass. "Backwards? That is impossible, Maya. Maybe you are just tired from the drive." I shrugged and took a long, slow sip of my wine. "Probably. It is just that the numbers are all upside down too." He chuckled, a sound that lacked any real warmth or sincerity. "You definitely need some rest, so sweetheart." I went to bed, but I did not sleep. While he was in the bathroom, I reached into his perfectly organized briefcase and swapped his expensive fountain pen with a cheap plastic one that leaked blue ink. I also took one of his socks from his suitcase and hid it inside the pillowcase of the guest room. The next morning, the game truly began. Liam was frantic. He could not find his pen, and his sock drawer was a complete mess. He kept glancing at me, waiting for me to show signs of confusion or distress, but I was the picture of calm. I told him I saw a man in a red hat standing in the tree line. There was no man in a red hat, of course. I watched through the window as Liam spent 3 hours patrolling the perimeter with a heavy flashlight, looking increasingly frustrated. By the 3rd day, the atmosphere in the cabin was thick with a tension you could cut with a knife. Liam was no longer the calm, collected manipulator. He was jumpy. Every time I laughed at a joke no one told, he would flinch. Every time I whispered to the taxidermy bear in the corner, he would turn pale. I found the second part of Sarah's plan in the very back of the journal. She had not actually gone to Europe. She was living in this small town 10 miles away, waiting for the right moment to strike. She had left the journal as bait, hoping the next girl would be smart enough to join forces with her. I used Liam's phone while he was in the shower to send a message to a number hidden in the back of the notebook. The reply was instantaneous. I have the paperwork ready. Meet me at the clearing tonight. That evening, I told Liam I heard a loud scratching sound inside the walls. He went into the crawl space with a flashlight, muttering about squirrels and old foundations. I followed him, but instead of helping, I slammed the heavy wooden hatch shut and slid the massive oak wardrobe over it. The muffled shouting from below was absolute music to my ears. I walked out to the clearing where a woman was waiting. It was Sarah. She looked healthy, vibrant, and incredibly smug. She held a folder full of legal documents. It turns out Liam had been doing this for years, targeting women with significant assets. But Sarah was a forensic accountant. She had spent her time away building a massive case for fraud and emotional abuse. We spent the night drinking the expensive wine Liam had saved for our anniversary and watching sunrise over the mountains. When the police arrived the next morning, they found Liam trapped in his own crawl space, surrounded by the evidence of his previous scams that Sarah and I had conveniently placed there while he was screaming for help. As they led him away in handcuffs, his hair disheveled, and his beige sweater covered in dusty cobwebs, I leaned in and whispered, "Liam, honey, you look a bit pale. Did you forget your vitamins?" He looked at me with pure, unadulterated terror. It was the most satisfying moment of my entire life. I did not just get my revenge. I got a new best friend and a really great story for my next date. But first, I think I will keep the cabin. Sarah and I already checked the deed, and thanks to a few clever legal loopholes he tried to use on her, it is technically in her name now, and she is a very generous landlord. I looked at the woods one last time and realized that sometimes the best way to deal with a monster is to show him that you can be a lot scarier than he ever imagined. The silence of the forest was finally peaceful,